The purpose of this video is to review the basics of solving equations which you've studied in the past, and maybe to give you a bit of a different insight into what solving an equation really means. So I have a statement here, and it says that we have a number, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a flow chart to represent this equation. I have a number which I'm going to say is x because I don't know what it is, and I'm going to double that number, it says, so I'm going to multiply by 2, which means my x turns into 2x. And I'm then going to add 3 to that, add 3. And so that's going to give me 2x plus 3. And it's saying that the result of that is 7. So in other words, we want this 2x plus 3 to be 7. So I'm just going to say that. All right? And so my equation that I'm solving is 2x plus 3 is equal to 7. We've built our equation from the words that were provided. Now what we want to do is solve the equation to find out what x actually is. So if I look at my flowchart, what I need to do is go backwards from what I know my answer is back towards what the original number itself was. And to do this, I simply have to reverse the operations. So to go backwards up the chart to get where I started from, I'm going to have to, if I added 3 here, subtract 3. And so that's going to make my 7, 4. And then to go from the second step to the first step, if I multiplied by 2 to go from first to second, then I'm going to have to divide by 2 to go from second to first. And if I divide 4 by 2, I get 2. And that's saying that x is equal to 2. We can certainly check that out by substituting x equals 2 into our equation. If I go 2 times 2, that's 4, plus 3, it's 7. That definitely works out. So the point of what I'm trying to show here is that solving equation is reversing your original operations to free your x, to get your x by itself. Okay? Let's just go through this process again, but let me do it directly on the equation. So I have x multiplied by 2, then 3 is added to it, and I'm getting 7. So to reverse this process, I have to reverse my order of operations. The last thing I did was add 3, so to reverse that, I'm going to have to subtract 3. And remember, whatever I do to one side of an equation, I must do to the other, because an equation is a balance. We need to keep it in balance. So we have 7 minus 3 on the right is 4. 3 minus 3 on the left is 0, and so I have 2 times x is equal to 4. My x is multiplied by 2, and I want to free the x from multiplying by 2. So to free it, I'm going to inverse it. Divide both sides by 2. That will reverse the process. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2, and I get my x equals 2. So like I said, I'm sure you've seen all of this equation solving stuff before, but the point is, solving an equation is really reversing your operations that were used to build the equation originally. That means that we use inverse operations to solve equations. And by inverse operations, I just mean operations that undo the effect of an original operation. Some of the common ones we know that if we add 3 to something, subtracting 3 will bring us back to what we started with. So adding and subtracting are inverse operations. If we multiply something by 2, and then we want to bring it back to what the number was originally, well, dividing by 2 will do that. So multiplying and dividing are inverse operations. Another operation you know is if you square a number. If you take 3 and you square it, you get 9. How can you bring back your original number 3? Well, you can square root. So squaring and square rooting are inverse operations. And as you go through your study of math, you'll encounter more and more inverse operations that allow you to solve more and more complex types of equations. All right, let's just go through this process with one more question. I have x. So I'm just talking about how the equation was built. I divided by 4 to get x over 4. We then subtracted 1 from that to get x over 4 minus 1, and that came out to be 9. So to reverse the process, we are going to have to, inverse of subtracting is adding 1, And the inverse of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. Alright, you can work that out on your own. Let's apply it to the equation directly. So x over 4 minus 1 equals 9. Okay, so solving an equation involves reversing our order of operations. Alright, x divided by 4 minus 1. The first thing that needs to be cleared out of the way is the minus 1. So to counteract minus 1, we can add 1 to both sides. That would be 10. These go away. And so we have x over 4. My x has been divided by 4. So to release it from divided by 4, I can multiply both sides by 4. This is just fractions, remember, so don't get scared. Those cross reduce, so x equals 40. Really? X equals 40? Let's check it out. Plug 40 back into equation. 40 divided by 4, just talk it out. 40 divided by 4 is 10, minus 1 is 9. Yes, that's true, and I know I've solved it correctly.